I have another concern that I wanted to bring up, and that is, do we know what we're getting into when we open the door to special government favoritism for religion that doesn't apply to anybody else? Let me give you an example. Most people don't remember this, but in the spring of 2002, the current Pope, Benedict, when he was Cardinal Ratzinger, still head of the Office for Defense of the Doctrine of the Faith, stated that if Catholic priests are charged with child abuse, that the countries in which the abuse supposedly occurs should not prosecute them, but let the Church handle it internally. Now, if the United States had adopted Pope Benedict's then recommendation, it would mean that if any human being within that country's borders molests a child, they go through that country's legal system. But if a Catholic church molests a child, if a Catholic clergy priest molests a child, that priest is insulated from civil liability or criminal prosecution and can go through some kind of secretive process in the church. Had Ratzinger's concept taken hold, it would have meant a wholesale special exemption for religious child abusers of his church as opposed to any other kind of child abuser. So we have to ask ourselves, at what point do we say that government cannot give the religious special privileges or special leniency not enjoyed by anyone else? It's a very serious question, and the fact that the current Pope could even suggest such a thing to me is quite troubling. And also, I remember during the child abuse, sex abuse litigation of the Archdiocese of Greater Los Angeles that carried on for many years, before the Archdiocese in LA settled for $660 million, that in the early stages of the litigation, the church tried to argue that it had special rights to conceal certain records because of its religious status. So it becomes very ominous if we don't have definite boundaries by which we say, no, the religious must play by the same governmental rules as anyone else, with no special rights or special exemptions not enjoyed by anyone else.
I have a couple of comments to make, and first I'd like, I'm sorry, I forgot your first name? John. You said you wrote the argument for, is that correct?
Yes.
But it's signed by Brad and Deborah. Did you write it?
I was in the state of Iowa, so I couldn't sign it where I was, and there was a short time fuse, so I allowed them to go ahead and adopt it.
Okay, just wanted to make that clear. Your body language seemed to be a little frustrated by people coming in from out of the city.
No, this is a comment that we don't have any Villa Park folks on the panel. I just made an observation.
Well, actually, we do have some Villa Park people that are against this. They chose not to attend tonight.
No, just on the panel.
On the panel. Have to make sure that, remember, it was Jackie Sullivan from Bakersfield, a city much farther away from where these gentlemen are at, who brought this particular issue to the cities of Orange County. So I think that if you're going to look at these people as outsiders, you have to look at the outsiders who brought this petition in. If you were equal, you should actually be saying, what is this person coming to Villa Park and all the cities in Orange County trying to get the legislators of those cities to adopt a religious motto? So outside the city. Okay. You said that was divisive, but I tell you what is actually divisive. If I go to 7 states in the United States, 7 of those states won't allow me to testify because I happen to be a non-believer. I cannot put my hand on a book and testify in any court. If I saw somebody murder somebody, I could not testify for the defendant or for the victim. Is that divisive? I think it's very divisive. In 14 states, I am not allowed to have any seat of government. In 14 states. Even if I was very well qualified, lived in the community, was an established citizen, a good and moral person as people viewed me, I could not take the seat of 14 in 14 states. Is that divisive? I think so. I think that I like the comments of both of the speakers tonight on the bigger issue. Now, in Villa Park, the people that I've talked to, since I do live in Villa Park, see it as a very simple issue. I believe in God. Therefore, God is on this measure in part, and I'm going to vote for it. They don't see the bigger picture. The bigger picture is that some people, the minority, it's obvious, will be second-class citizens if this goes through. I think it's the fact that it's very easy not to explore the measure further than its face value, so to speak. And it's very easy to say, oh, well, it's not going to offend 2 or 3 people in the community, as one of our council members said. But it will offend a certain amount of people in our community. If Villa Park is indicative of the rest of the United States, we have about 18% non-believers, and of those, about half are pretty serious non-believers. It will make them feel like second-class citizens. When I walk in this room once a month and I see a plaque that it's so offensive to me to see that plaque there, knowing even now that it wasn't the city council or it wasn't government in the way of state or federal, but it was our own citizens that put that plaque there, making me feel like a second-class citizen. And about 1,600 other people in Villa Park, if you take the percentages indicative to the United States.
If the city enacts something with that phrase there, I would think that ministers from this particular faith tradition that I come from would have a hard time with that. The other piece is the discussion again about e pluribus unum. Why is that not a phrase that's being encouraged equally so?
Well, I do have another angle to this. What if I came here actually as a stalking horse for some Hasidic rabbis from the Los Angeles area who will ask the city of Villa Park to vote on a measure that every December for the 8 days of Hanukkah there would be a giant-size Hanukkah menorah on public property in Villa Park. Now, in order to make sure this measure passes, they are importing thousands of their friends to move into the city and to register to vote. And so lo and behold, Villa Park, Orange County, over the next 6 months, on Friday nights and Saturday mornings, you see a sea of black hats, never seen in the city before, and they prevail, and sure enough, they win Measure BB in 2010, which requires the giant menorah to be displayed during the Hanukkah season. Well, the fact that the Hasidic now constitute 80% of the voting population because they've all moved in for this purpose does not make it any more constitutional. It still is a church state or a synagogue state violation. So I'm using this sort of tongue-in-cheek to point out that government neutrality in matters of religion ultimately benefits everyone, believer and non-believer alike.
One final question.
Eddie, that begs the question. Is it legal to have any majority in any city decide a religious issue?
No, it's not constitutional. I mean, the First Amendment, once an issue comes under the orbit of the First Amendment, then it is not really subject to popular vote. Whatever one's view is of the First Amendment, whatever that view is, the one thing we are clear on is that once the First Amendment is implicated, if it is implicated, its views are not subject to popular vote.
So what you're saying is that if a 5-member city council votes for the motto in certain cities, that's actually more legal and less, it's harder to defend in the Constitution and with the First Amendment
What I'm saying is
than
that
a majority.